All right, so some technical difficulties, obviously. The name of this talk is Blue Team 101, as you can see by the slides, which you can't see. So we're just going to wing it. To be honest with you, there's nothing really extravagant in the slides. It's just slides, right? It doesn't really matter because it's going to be some words that we're going to be talking about anyway. So you just have to deal with, instead of staring at a blank screen, you can look at us if you want, or you can just stare at the blank screen, that's fine too. Bios. So my name is Jamie Murdock. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer at Binary Defense, and that's all that's really important. I've been doing this for about 15 years, so I guess there's a little bit of credibility.
I'm Josh Pachmayer. I'm a SOC shift lead at Binary Defense, and I've been doing this for a couple of years.
This is his first presentation, so if you're going to do heckling, I know you probably want to heckle me, but nail him first. So, and yes, his mom actually does know he's here tonight, so it's okay. I did have to get a permission slip. And you're also missing the picture of me at 8 years old because I put that in the bio, so you guys are missing out on a lot, I guess. So, red team versus blue team. In security, what does everyone think about when you think of like what security is? Most people think about, the red team. The red team's sexy. That's the cool stuff. That's what you see in the movies. That's what you see in CSI Cyber. Because that's how things really work. I'm going to create a GUI and Visual Basic, something like that. Yeah. So that's the really cool stuff, You get to have fun. You get to have excitement. You become elite hacksaws. That's the cool stuff, right? Then you have perception.
It's not mine. What's his name?
I don't know. So then you have the perception of the blue team. It's boring. It's easy work. You sit there and you just stare at a monitor and you don't really do anything. It's corporate, so it's not really fun.
Please, it's recorded.
Hello?
It's recorded.
It's recorded.
Yes.
I have a red light and it's not green.
That's okay.
Okay.
Battery dies, I have spares somewhere around here.
I'm just going to hold it like this so we can kind of go off and on. Anyway, it's corporate, right? It's what the noobs do. It's really boring. No one really wants to do it. So that's the perception, and to be honest with you, when it came to security in general and security dollars spent, that's the way it was. The red team got the money. The red team got the glory, and they got the jobs. And no one really wanted to do the blue team work. And why is that? Well, you don't get the money, you don't get the dollar, or you don't get the dollars, you don't get the fun, and no one is going to pay somebody to watch a monitor because they're not regulated to, or they're not contractually obligated to. But I have to have a pen test, so I'm going to spend the money on that and do that. So that's why, a lot of people originally were thinking, that's the way I'm going to go. That's the way I have to do it. But honestly, it's not the case anymore. The truth, nowadays, there is more demand for talented blue team members than there is red team. Now, there's always going to be a need for both, but if you go into any company and just walk up to whoever is in charge of security and say, hey, do you have any positions open? And what are they? They're probably something on the blue team side. If they don't have any positions, what were the last ones filled? It's probably on the blue team side. And it is hard. It is hard to be on the blue team. Because, red teamers, raise your hands. Blue teamers? All right, we got some. I usually don't see any. So, red teamers, you only have to be right. I don't know. You can attack all day long, and you might get in, you might not. It doesn't matter. One time to be successful, and that's all it takes. We have to be right all the time. All the time we have to be right, because the one time that he works and gets in and we don't do anything about it or we don't see it, I'm going to be on monster.com. So if anyone is hiring, just in case that happens, just remember me, please. It's not all corporate. It's not. I mean, there are a lot of companies that have blue teams, and yeah, it's corporate, but you have the same thing with the red team. The reality is there's still a lot of fun to be had. The organization we work at Binary Defense Systems, we have a lot of fun. as well as our sisters in crime over at TrustedSec. You know, they have a lot of fun too on the red team side.
We just got yelled at for having Nerf darts on the ground.
Yes. So there's a little bit of sibling rivalry there, but that's okay. We actually had a memo from our office administrator saying, please remember that the cleaning staff comes on Mondays, so make sure you have all the Nerf darts picked up. So, you know, the culture's changing on the blue team side as well. So it's not just corporate sitting at a desk in a cubicle farm watching a monitor.
All right, so the blue team has many different sides, just like the red team does, and there's different specialities that you can do. You can have the monitor watching people, like what I do right now. But you also have the forensics guys that go in after a breach happens and has to figure out how it happened, which, because, right here?
You don't talk into the microphone or near it. It doesn't really pick you up.
Yeah, I'm not very loud to begin with either, so. Okay.
You have to get loud.
I don't get really loud, so sorry. What? What?
Go ahead.
Oh, well, I lost my thing. Anyway, so what I was saying is there's multiple different parts of the blue team that you can have, like the forensics and I don't know, what else? Forensics, you have
Well, actually, we're
monitor
going to
watching
go
people.
more into detail on it. I know you can't see it, so there you go.
Yeah. And the common theme of everyone working on the blue team is to protect the network from getting attacked from attackers like red team people. Yay.
So to kind of highlight some of the bigger areas of the blue team, you know, just like the red team, there's a lot of different facets inside there. So I'm just going to hit on the main ones, and not that there are any more important than the other. The reason I'm hitting on these main ones is, to be honest with you, these are where the dollars are being spent right now, from the top down. So first and foremost, monitoring and detection. What is monitoring and detection? That's the guys who actually watch the monitors, but it's a lot more than that. You know, I can actually bring my kids into work and have them, and I have them watch the sim just in case something pops up. You know, my 14-year-old can do that. However, what my 14-year-old can't do is be able to see something that's triggered and actually put some thought process behind it. I see an account lockout. Okay, Ryan locked his account out again. That happens. Well, why am I seeing Ryan's account locked out from this machine, and then this machine, and then this machine, and then this machine? You know, one's more severe than another. When you first see something come through, you have to look at it and determine, is this a threat or a potential threat or not? And, you know, if you don't think that's important, ask Target how they feel about monitoring and detection right now. Ask the Office of Personnel Management what they think about monitoring and detection. Or, I don't know, if anyone's left at Sony, you can ask them too. They all have the tools in place. And it kind of goes back to what the two gentlemen before were talking about when it comes to cyber. I felt dirty for that. Risk insurance for IT. Justin had asked a question about what if you have the tools in place, but in essence you don't do what you were supposed to do with those tools. And I think what he was getting at is, that kind of example. So you have a SIM, you have something that's monitoring your network, and you have it in place, and every morning you get that report of your alarms. That's great. I have a tool, check that box. That tool doesn't mean anything at the end of the day. If you're using it to get a report in the morning of what it saw, what's going to happen on 2 a.m. on Friday after Thanksgiving? No one's going to be in the office on Friday, more than likely, or Saturday, or Sunday. So you come in on Monday and you see that report. Guess what? By the time you read that report, if a skilled hacker has gotten in, your data's gone. It doesn't matter at that point. Congratulations, I have a SIM. Congratulations, I spent $150,000 this month in licensing alone. after I spent about $250,000 in initial hardware investment. Why? Because I thought I was protected. There's a huge difference between buying a piece of technology and actually using it properly. One second. So, what else does monitoring and detection do? It actually decreases your response time. And it increases the chances that if you see something, you can stop that data exfiltration. The days of, sweet, I got domain admin, I own everything, honestly, in my opinion, those days are over. Okay, you're shaking your head, cool. That doesn't matter. If I can get in, I can get domain admin, but I can't get past the just basic corporate domain, but the keys of the kingdom is in R&D, and I can't pivot into that network, it doesn't matter. Yay, I got domain admin. MS 08067 works again. It doesn't matter. The data is what counts. The data is what's important. And having a tool that you can use that'll give you a heads-up alert, having the right people in place to actually go, hey, that doesn't look like it should be happening. We should look into that. Now, attackers might be inside your network. It's going to happen. There is no CISO, C-level, entry-level admin that can say we're not going to get breached. Because if they are, they're in the wrong line of work. It's going to happen. But what is important is how do you respond to that? How do you deal with somebody actually getting into your network? And that starts with your monitoring and your detection. With monitoring and detection, you also have to continuously tune your tools. If you purchase a SIM and you have professional services come out and they say, look, you're rocking and rolling, you're all set. They'll be $25,000, see you later. That's not going to do you any real good in the grand scheme of things. You still have to tune it. You still have to write content for your environment. That professional services engineer that was out for maybe a week, more than likely, what he did was take the basic content, got it set up for your environment for the most part, taught you how to use it, made some cool dashboards for you, showed you how to run a report, and got on a plane and left. What's important is the people who are actually going to be using that tool on a daily basis. So you know your environment, you know your network, hopefully, and you need to start creating content based on what you see. And most importantly, those pen tests that you're getting, because business side is actually paying for them, you need to take those technical findings of what actually worked, how you got popped by that pen tester. Did you see it in any of your monitoring capabilities? If you didn't, why? As a blue team guy or girl, the main thing you should be thinking to yourself is, that's a huge flag. We have a pen test done, and it says where we have vulnerabilities and where we have other areas of improvement. But from monitoring and detection side, from the people who actually are charged with protecting the keys of the kingdom, you should say, whoa, we should have seen that. Why didn't we? Do we have content that's not created right? Maybe we have to create content. So from a monitoring and detection standpoint, I mean, grew up blue team since I was a little security guy, so that's got a really special place for me. But at the end of the day, it's probably the most important thing you can do for security, outside of making sure your people don't open up phishing emails, which you'll never stop.
Wow, I cannot talk today. Another important aspect of the blue team is how you actually handle an incident and how you respond to it when, you do get breached. First and foremost is handling it. So when you're handling it, you have to go through the proper steps, like, hey, like Jimmy said, he's trying to log in from 5 different machines. Why is this happening? Okay. Oh, he was at a cyber cafe the other day on open Wi-Fi. Okay. So now we can piece together that maybe someone got his password as he's trying to log in to the network through the cyber cafe or some random stuff like that. Then you have your forensic abilities, which, okay, did they get anything? We have to dig into the system and find out, hey, what was accessed? What did they steal? Did they pull anything off the systems? Or anything along those lines, Because, And really,
Yeah, you know that one.
really, no, I'm just kidding. So as you start to do this, you have to investigate the incidents, and as they come in, you have more and more, and maybe you can build a report off of, hey, the 5 brute forces that we saw from the 5 different machines translate into, hey, they accessed into, I don't know, our R&D share that has the new plans to build the plane that we want to sell to the DoD. Okay, how much did they get out of that? Well, there's an FTP system, FTP, yeah, that they opened up, and hey, they moved 5 gigs of data across. Hey, that equals to the share of our R&D folder. Chances are you just lost your R&D folder. Hey, this is all you.
So the next thing that we are going to hit on is threat intelligence. So what's threat intelligence? Threat intelligence is a really awesome new buzzword. However, it's a buzzword that's still important. It's still a service that is important. So what is threat intelligence? It's, at the end of the day, it's gathering information that you can use in your environment to help give you an edge on being more proactive with your security posture. So there's a lot of different things that fall into threat intelligence. It can be something as simple as monitoring the right feeds in Twitter, open source intelligence, monitoring Twitter, setting up Google alerts, just the very basic things. Anonymous chapter whatever out of Pakistan says, you know what, on the 5th of July, we're going to go after every major bank in the United States. Okay, that's not that big of a deal. That kind of stuff happens all the time. However, maybe perk up a little bit. You start listening to more and more chatter. You start looking at more and more feeds. And it turns out that you find a list of the exact banks that are going to get hit and the exact times they're going to get hit and what tools they're actually going to go for or going to use to go after these attacks. All off of one little tweet that you probably would say, it's anonymous again. They're attacking somebody. Well, those kind of things can actually add up. And that's off of something as simple as a Twitter feed. One tweet. So, there's services, and to be honest, we offer one too, but there's services out there that, you can spend a lot of money on threat intelligence for. And they're good services. However, if you're a smaller shop, or you kind of want to see the value of it on your own, there's a lot you can do on your own. If you want to get a lot more deep into it, on the flip side of open source intelligence is going to the dark net. Now, I wouldn't do this from work, and I wouldn't do it from your house for sure, but there are places you can go, and there was a news article, I think a month ago, on, in the dark net, they're trying to hire people to be hackers. Well, that's legit, and it's not something that happened last month. It's been going on for quite some time. But there's companies that I might know pretty well that have people who actually go on those sites. They have false personas, multiple false personas, and they actually, for lack of a better term, work assets that they develop for threat intelligence. Oh, so this group's looking for hackers that are going to do these kind of things. They're looking for people who have an expertise in trying to penetrate SCADA systems. You start putting that little piece of knowledge away, then you see that, the Tunisian cyber army is looking to pop some U.S. utility systems. Okay, well, I know that these guys over here are looking for people, so you start working with them. Hey, I want to get involved in this. What can I do? What do I need to do to join this? So there's a lot of different things you can do with threat intelligence. Now, why is it important? Who really cares other than, it sounds like wannabe CIA stuff and it's a really cool buzzword. By getting the information that you focus on either your company or the sector of business that you're in, or maybe your suppliers, because to be honest with you, I'm not a red team guy, but if I had a major target to go after, I'd find out who their suppliers were, who won't have as good security. I'm going to breach them and then go up chain. So, I would be monitoring the people that are supplying me. So it gives you just a little bit of an edge on, what should we be looking for? What can we look at? What can we do to make ourselves better? So, sorry, but Blue Team's where it's at. It really is. We have more funding coming in. It's sad, but at the end of the day, from the board and the C-suite, they're coming out and going, this Target thing, these people at Target or something like that got hacked. What are we doing to stop that from happening to us? Well, we're doing nothing because for the past 10 years, we've been asking you for money and resources, and you haven't given us anything. So that's what we're doing. Well, that's not good enough. No shit. So can we have some money? So C-level and board, from the board level, are actually starting to go, hey, this looks like it's probably important. So we need a plan from you all to get everything going and tell us what our roadmap is and what our strategies are for developing the right program to protect our environment. So, Blue Teamers, yay, after all this time, we're finally getting some dollars. Defending the kingdom is becoming the top priority for a lot of businesses. From a board level, management level, C-level, anyone who has the authority to sign something on the dotted line, they're going, you know what, our data actually matters. I don't want to be the next fill in the blank. Time and time again, you'll hear that. I don't want to be the next, OPM. I don't want to be the next Target, Sony, whatever's going to happen this weekend, which I'm just making that up, so if something big does happen this weekend, I had nothing to do with it. Probably. And like all things, you have to have a place to start. So it's easy for someone like me and Josh here to say, sit here and preach Blue Team, and this is what we need to do, and thanks, have a good night. So, where do you start? Do you want to hit this one?
Sure, why not? A good first place to start would be, does your company have a SIM? If the answer is yes, are you tuning it properly? Are you making sure you keep up with the latest, attacks that are coming out daily or anything else like that? If you don't, there's plenty of open source options that you can look into that are free that you can set up. They're not going to give you in-depth, stuff that some of the paid stuff will, but you can start getting an idea of what's on your network and what you need to monitor. And along with that lines, are you working with your networking team? Does your networking team send you logs that you can parse through in your SIM? Because if security and networking aren't talking to each other, chances are you're not going to see anything. Even if you do have a shiny SIM, it's just going to sit there and be a fancy box. And then, start working with threat intelligence. Set up, monitor Twitter, look at, hey, is someone gonna look at Twitter or, saying something about us on Twitter? For all you know, there could be someone on Twitter saying, I'm gonna go and, hack them tomorrow. It's not really hard to look at Twitter twice a day for your company.
And as silly as that sounds, it happens all the time. Because, so your larger groups, your state-sponsored actors, criminal organizations, yeah, they're going to keep the cards a little closer to their vest. But in general, those who are just doing it to be malicious in general without a real defined target, they'll announce it all the time. I worked with a case with the FBI 3-4 years ago that started off a tweet from a group named Turkish Ajan, and worked through, and I was like, I want to look more into this. So I started looking more and more and more, and I didn't do any of the darknet stuff. That wasn't my forte. So all the stuff I did was open source intelligence. And at the end of the day, walked in, I called the FBI, I said, hey, I have this, I think you're working this case, you might want to look at this. Turned over all my information to him. Said, cool, can you look at these guys? And I said, no. Because what I don't do is, when I used to do threat intelligence, my whole thing was no U.S. nationals. So I said, if you want me to go after foreign nationals, fine. I'm not doing U.S. nationals, that's just me. And everyone has to draw a line somewhere. But at the end of the day, again, do your own threat intelligence. It doesn't take much to set up a channel in TweetDeck or whatever it is that you want to use and look for certain things in Twitter. So, the purple team. That's next gen. Yay! There's been quite a few talks recently about the purple team, and it's awesome. I think it's probably the best thing to happen in our industry in a very long time. It's kind of like the CIA and the FBI going, you know what? I have some stuff you might be able to use. You have some stuff I might be able to use. Why don't we share or collaborate together to actually share this information and make security better? So the whole premise behind the purple team, which I'm not going to go into because that's multiple talks in its own, at the end of the day, what the purple team is the red team and the blue team working together. The red team coming in, doing their pen test, finding out where the gaps in security are, working, and then the blue team works with them to identify those gaps and make sure that they can be seen or remediated or what have you. And on the flip side, the blue team going to the red team saying, hey, we have, there's this new way to detect what you're doing for your pen tests. Why don't you, hit our lab to see if you can actually get through without being detected? You didn't? Sweet. +1 for us. Now, you guys can actually go through and say, okay, we haven't seen this before. Let's see how we can get around it. So there is actually a back and forth that goes into it. It's not just the red team feeding stuff to the blue team. It is actually a true partnership between the red team and the blue team. Yeah, that's pretty much that slide. So that at the end was like the end of the talk piece itself, and I'm really kind of upset that I couldn't have this up. So for those of you who can't see, all it is a picture of Dave Kennedy from our website, and it just says Cyber, Cloud, Internet of Things, and Thought Leader. And what this is basically almost every term I could think of off the top of my head that Dave hates. And ABT in China.
How's he not hate credit, though?
He actually likes it. Maybe not the exact term, but he likes the premise. So that was just a little ha-ha that obviously is not going to work at all in this kind of little laptop thing. So from a slides perspective, which we don't have any, that was the end of that, but I did want to have enough time for questions and answers, so fire away if you have any. Yes, sir.
When are we going to start purple teaming with you guys?
That's classified. You're going to have to fill out the 899B and have it sent to our legal department. No. That's a good question, honestly. That's something we should address with Mr. Kennedy.
Yeah, I always think that I would love to know more about it, because I've never done blue teaming.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to know about how detection systems work, how to set them up, how to tune them, all that kind of stuff.
Come on down. Seriously. Come on.
All night.
Yeah, we're there. You come in at any time, you want to sit down with one of these guys.
So the problem is we're all too busy.
Yeah. I mean, we have worked some with, not yourself, but some other folks to grab some of their content, a lot of it from Dave. But yeah, you guys can come down anytime. Anyone else have questions?
What time of day do you usually have attacks?
Great question. So the question was, what time of day do we usually have attacks? The answer is yes.
Is it more towards holidays? Is it more in the evening?
Right. So it depends on what kind of attacks. So your targeted attacks, typically what happens is you have an attacker who's going to do their recon for a while. They're going to learn about your company. They're going to learn about your shifts. They're going to learn when you have less people actually on the system, so it makes it easier for them to get in. So if you're a shop that closes the week of Christmas, that could be a great time to come in. Or if you really want to be that guy and make people paranoid, you can do nothing the week of Christmas. And then the first week everyone's back, they're not really paying attention, that's when you go in. So holidays, yes. At the end of the day, from a targeted standpoint, it doesn't really matter. From just a malicious standpoint, people screwing around, target of opportunity type stuff, yeah, it's going to be when you don't have people on site, when you don't have resources going, so holidays, evening hours, things like that. If you have operations overseas, I used to work for a global company, and I can tell you that places in Asia Pacific, they would get hit during their business hours, so it would show up, in the evening for us. because their security was a little bit more lax, even though they were supposed to be following corporate standards. They were outside the continental U.S. They were, had their own people running security for them. So those happened at any time. But at the end of the day, if it's targeted opportunities, off hours are the, when you see the most. If it's more targeted, more deliberate, then you're not going to see like all of a sudden something happens like that. Yes, sir.
For Josh, you mentioned some open source products. Can you give us some names of some products?
Like the Sims and stuff like that?
Yeah.
The one that I can think of off the top of my head is Sims. Yeah.
OSSIM. Splunk. Yep. ArcSight has a free version of their logger. The logger does not do correlation. However, it does, it is log aggregation, and they do have a lot of search filters that you can put in and almost do what they call an active channel, which is active monitoring of certain things. It can do almost like light active monitoring. Tyler? Yeah.
So one of the questions that I think companies need to ask themselves when they start looking into their blue teaming and whether or not it needs built up or whatever is how much they want to do in-house versus outsourced. What are you seeing, or I guess what do you perceive out there as companies saying, I want this much in-house versus outsourcing and so on?
Sure. So the question was, just repeating for the mic since it's being recorded, what do I see as far as in-house versus not hosted, this isn't cloud, outsourced, thank you. Outsourced, like incident response, monitoring and detection, that kind of stuff. My view right now is a little skewed because I work from an MSSP, so obviously I see a lot of outsourcing coming our way. I will say though, in the past 5 years probably, it's actually been probably 50-50. Now, the in-house portion though usually has at least some piece of like a professional services engagement. So I worked for a financial institution that wanted to build their own security operations center. So they had, the company I worked for, we went in, I built their security operations center, I did all the fun policy procedure stuff that everyone loves to do, and then when they spun it up, it was a hybrid of security analysts for the company I worked for and security analysts of their own, and it ran like that for a year. That's actually, I'm seeing, at least in the past, probably 5 years, more of that when it comes to in-house operations. Also starting to, and the reason I say it's about 50-50 is because even people who have their own monitoring and detection program or incident response program, they're actually going, you know what? Piggybacking off of the previous talk, I would rather defer that risk to another company. So, I can actually open up cycles for the analysts that I have who are doing 5 jobs anyway to only do maybe 4 jobs, have this other company responsible for forensics, incident response, monitoring and detection, and if something happens, then we can go back to them and say, why didn't you see this? Why didn't we respond properly? Things like that. So at the end of the day, it's probably still about 50-50, but on the in-house 50 side, it is kind of a collaboration with a provider. Somebody else had a question. Yes, sir.
Since the feds are pretty much targeting anybody that's doing anything malicious nowadays, how liable do you think the threat intelligence feeds actually are? I don't see anybody actually posting anything.
That's a great question. So the question was, with the feds, getting involved in a lot of things, how viable are the threat intelligence feeds anymore? Because you really don't see people posting that much anymore, which is absolutely true, especially after, the issues with Tor. I forgot the name of the guy who had the darknet site where Silk Road. Yeah. Yeah. All these other things, and the feds are getting a lot more involved, and they are watching a lot more. So from a threat intelligence standpoint, that does hurt somewhat. Now, from what we consider, the easy pickings, like the I am anonymous Richfield and I'm going to go after Coca-Cola. Yeah, you're not going to really see kind of things like that anymore. However, if you're following the right people and you know, and you kind of get a feel for it, you get a baseline of what's going on, you can still start to pick up things. Like I might start saying that I'd watch out if I were Coca-Cola. You know, that's simple, right? Doesn't really matter. But then you start seeing what that person does. Who does that person associate with? Are they saying anything about, you know, we're about to jack some people up? You know, things like that. So, no offense, hackers really like to let people know what they're doing. So they can't come out just directly anymore and say it, but they can't fight that urge to just kind of leave a trail. And it makes, from a threat intelligence standpoint, yeah, from an open source intelligence standpoint, it makes it harder. Excuse me, it makes it harder. But, you know, at some point that was going to happen. You know, the other shoe was going to drop. We figured at some point it wasn't just going to be, hey, go let this customer know about this, let this customer know about this, hey, I need to tell my boss this. It's not like that anymore. It's a little bit more hard work, but it's still useful. We're still seeing stuff out of there, and stuff that is just absolutely ridiculously crazy. Yes, sir?
So how long would it take, generally, knowing that each environment's different, for an organization to try to tune their SIM to a reasonable standpoint, and then how often should they revisit that tuning?
Good question. So the question is, how long about does it take to have a company tune their SIM, and then how often should they reevaluate the tuning? I would say on average, how long does it take? If you give it a solid 40 hours, solid, that's all you're doing, 40 hours of looking at your SIM, that should at least get you to a point where you're kind of caught up, if you will. You know what I mean? So if you have professional services come in, they do their engagement, you start going through, and you're like, you know what, I'm not seeing as much as I really think I should. If you give it a solid 40 hours, 40 man hours, you should at least at that point gone through the process of identifying what content is working, what might be broken, what you don't have, and what you need to add. So that should at least give you a good baseline where you're like, okay, cool. I think we're doing pretty good, but here are the other things I need to start focusing on as well. How often should you do that? To be perfectly honest with you, always. A SIM is a living, breathing animal that you have to feed. You can't ever just walk away from it because at the end of the day, it's a beautiful blinky box. It will alert on everything you told it to before, and as soon as you stop feeding it, it's not going to tell you anything new. So, and I'm not saying it's a 40-hour-a-day job for small, medium-sized business, but if you're in a larger enterprise, it's, you know, it's an FTE if you have a good enterprise-level SIM, just for care and feeding. Every corporate job that I've had that had a SIM, a successful SIM, one that worked right, there was at least one person dedicated to making sure that that thing worked right and you got the data that you needed. So it's not an easy beast to slay. Yes, sir?
What kind of training is available for Blue Team?
Great question. So the question is, what kind of training is available for Blue Team? So those jerks have some really great stuff, you know, OSCP. I mean, that's all I really need to say. If you have that, that's awesome. We don't have that. Now, what we have is more product specific in general. You know, if I'm using ArcSight, I can go out and become an ArcSight guru. If I'm using Alien Vault, I'll be an Alien Vault guru. There are SANS classes now that look like they're actually pretty good. I don't know if you know anything about them in general. I've talked to one guy who did the incident response one. He said it was a pretty good one. Outside of SANS, I honestly haven't seen anything that I would say, go get that. Like the OSCP, if I was Red Team, I'd be like, go get that. I haven't seen anything like that for the Blue Team. Since we're just newly becoming sexy, it's, you know, along with the industry and the growth comes the training and everything behind it. So from a training perspective, I don't think it's caught up to that point yet, but there are some good SANS classes out there and product-specific classes.
I think once you get into some, just to add to your point, I think once you get into some specific, I guess like topics of blue teaming. So if you want to do NSM, network monitoring, or you want to do reverse engineering or malware analysis, then you get to some more specialized classes. But there you have to go to conferences like Black Hat or DEF CON or DerbyCon or something like that to get those. SANS offers some, but nothing like what's in the red teaming side.
Yeah. Real quick, I'm going to add on to his thing real quick. But so training and certification, completely different things, right? There may not be all those great certifications. However, there's a lot of good trainings from people who've been doing it for a long time. I saw Tyler years ago do one on malicious PDFs. That was really awesome. I've seen a couple other people give presentations and like almost like mini trainings at conferences on reversing. So from a knowledge standpoint, from something to like educate yourself standpoint, that's probably where I would focus on trying to learn more. Is if you can afford or have the company pay for you going to a conference and actually learning the stuff there, awesome. If not, YouTube has some good conferences as well and some good trainings you can see. One second.
YouTube and conferences. What about Case, Tri-C, or CSU?
So the question was, YouTubes and conferences, but what about like Case, Tri-C, CSU? To be honest with you, I'm not familiar with the programs that any of them offer. However, this gentleman has his hand up and he wants to speak, and it might have something to do with that. Yes, sir.
I believe a guy you may have heard of, Mick Douglas.
I know of him a little.
A couple of talks about bringing the sexy back to Blue Team.
He did.
I think it might have been at Nauticon or at DerbyCon.
Yep. So and that's kind of what I was talking about as far as conferences go. You can see presentations people have given at these conferences. DerbyCon you can watch on YouTube. A lot of the local ones here you can watch on YouTube. I think DEF CON you still have to pay for the disc. Huh?
They're torrents.
Yeah, well, agreed, but officially, I guess I should say. So the best bang for your buck when it comes to education on the blue team side is conferences, whether you're live or you see them or go to Iron Geek's site, or if you actually can go to one, or come to events like this. I started coming here about 7-8 years ago, and the very first presentation I saw here when I didn't know a whole lot about pure security was Dave Kennedy giving a talk on buffer overflows, and I thought my brain was actually pouring out my eye, my nose, and my ears because it was way over my head. But the more I started coming to things like this, the more I actually learned. I was talking to Dave tonight, and I was like, dude, this is like homecoming for me because this is kind of where I cut my teeth in security. And I've done a lot of different presentations, and I've been fortunate in my career to do a lot of fun things, but I've never spoken at NEOISF2015. So I'm actually speaking here tonight, so it was really cool. Thank you. Anyone else have questions or anything? Because it's almost 9 o'clock, and I'm sure you guys want to stop listening to me talk.
Are the cats on tonight?
Shut up. Once, twice. All right, I want to thank you all. I want to thank NEOISF for having me. And I want to thank Josh for his first presentation through all the failures we had.
We lose Justin. Thanks everyone for coming out tonight.
We lost our battery.
We lost our battery. Oh, there you are. I lost you. I'm back.